Hi, I'm Guang, I'm 15 years old. Here, we'll be continuing with a lesson on the techniques and applications of definite integration. So, in this lesson, this is a double integration that we'll be taking a look at. So, within this double integration, you'll have 7y squared minus 2x dx dy. And d being a boundary, it is within y is equal to x minus 2 squared, x is equal to 4, y-axis, and y is equal to 6. So, first of all, let's draw out whatever graph we have over here for the boundaries. So, this boundary, it might seem a bit complicated at first. So, an x-axis and a y-axis, and y is equal to x minus 2 squared. So that looks something like your y is equal to x squared graph, except you move it to the right by 2 units. So it's going to be something like this. And then x is equal to 4. So x is equal to 4. Will be somewhere around here. And lastly, y is equal to 6. Alright, so these are the different graphs we will be seeing. And what will be your area? That would be this entire part. Okay, so how are we going to solve this? How about we take a look at what happens if we integrate with respect to x first. So that means you have to go in this direction, which you would have to separate it into two different parts, since the first part it will be from a straight line to a straight line, and the second part is going to be from one part of the curve to the other part of the curve. Now, how do you know if it's exactly at this straight line? Well, you know the x-axis, the x values, so you can calculate the points by yourself. Alright? So, when you integrate with respect to x first, you will be separating it into these two different parts. Right? We take a look at, how about let's call this part I or something, and this part below part II or part 2. So for part 1, we have the straight line to another straight line, which x will be from 0, since this is your y-axis. So y-axis, your x is always 0. So from 0 to 4. And next, we look at your y value. So y value, you will need to find whatever you have here. So you can sub in either 0 or 4, since they both give y is equal to 4, which is obviously because one is a 2 square, the other is a negative 2 square. So y is from 4 to 6. Right, so that's your first part. Next, we take a look at the second part, in which the second part we will be adding on. So what will be your value for x? Now this value for x might be a bit more complicated to find, since you take a look at this function, you're only given y in terms of x. So I have to change that into x in terms of y. So changing that into x in terms of y, first of all we square root both sides, which will have x minus 2 is equal to positive negative square root y. And of course positive negative, since you will need to represent it with two different parts. But you might be wondering, isn't this graph just the entire thing? So why do we have to separate it into two different parts? But you have to realize that when we want to integrate, the functions have to be one value matching with one value, or in short, you just call it a one-to-one value or function, okay? So of course we would have to make it one-to-one in order for it to integrate. So in order to make it 1 to 1, we would have to, of course, separate it into 2 different parts. Right, so that means x is equal to 2 plus minus square root y. So which side is plus, which side is minus? Well, of course, for plus, they'll be on your right side, while for minus, they'll be on your left side. So you might be wondering, how is it separated? It would be pretty much like this, alright? So symmetrical on both sides, which when you have one point on here, you have another point on the other side, alright? So this function over here would be x is equal to 2 plus square root y, while this function over here would be x is equal to 2 minus square root y. Right, so now we know which side it integrates from and what it integrates to. Of course, the direction for integration of x will be from left to right, where you will have 2 minus square root y to 2 plus square root y. And what is your value for y? Well, y will be from 0 to what we just found out previously, so it is 0 to 4. Right, so these will be what we are trying to find. So let's integrate them first. Now we take a look at the first part where you have integrated from 4 to 6. And inside here you have 7xy squared minus 2 over 3x. Whoops, sorry, this is just x squared. And then you have to substitute in 0 and 4, or more specifically, x is equal to 0, x is equal to 4, and then of course dy. Alright, so that's your first term. And then you can take a look at your second term, which you add on, integrate from 0 to 4. 7xy squared minus x squared, this part is pretty much the same. Substitute in the values. X is equal to 2 minus square root y, and x is equal to 2 plus square root y dy. Alright, so I'll just make a little separation here. Right, so this is what we now have. And of course, we would have to substitute in whatever values we have. Integrate from 4 to 6. 7 times 4, which is 28 y squared. And then when you sub in 0, that's just a 0. Then minus 4 squared, which is 16. And of course, 0. And then dy. Well, for your part behind, you're going to have plus integrate from 0 to 4. And you will be having 7 multiplied by, so 7 multiplied by 2 plus square root y squared, and then minus 7 multiplied by 2 minus square root y squared, minus 2 plus square root y squared, plus 2 minus square root y squared. Alright, and of course dy. So this is what we are going to have. Alright. Now take a look at the first term. It should be pretty simple to integrate, where you will be seeing 28 over 3 y cubed, substituting the values 4 and 6, then minus 16, and you have to 16y, and you have to substitute in the values 4 and 6. Alright, so for this part behind, you would want to try to simplify as much as possible first, since you would probably realize you have a 14y squared minus 14y squared. So those are some of the parts where you can pretty much simplify first, just to make it a lot more simpler. So some parts that does not change, let's say 7 square root y square, or just y to the power of 5 over 2. Since you have a 7 and then plus 7, so you have 14y to the power of 5 over 2. And that is for the first two terms. Next, we can take a look at the next two terms, which you will probably realize negative 4, since it's a 2 squared, so negative 4 plus 4, that will cancel out. So the first term of each of these will cancel out, and the third term of each of them would also be cancelled out. So all you're left with is the second term for each of them. So minus So you will be seeing minus 8 square root y, or if you really want to, you can also leave it in the same form as the previous one, which is 8y to the power of half. And then dy, right? So this is the second part that you're going to integrate. Now, we take a look at the first term again. Of course, you're going to have, you might have a bit of a problem trying to solve this. So since you're going to have 28 over 3, 6 cubed minus 4 cubed, then of course minus 32 since you have 2 times 16, and then plus. So y to the power of 5 over 2, when you integrate that, you have y to the power of 7 over 2. But 7 over 2, then you have to multiply 2 over 7 in front. Wait. 14 multiplied by 2 over 7, which means you just have 4. Then y to the power of 7 over 2. Substituting the values 0 and 4. And we can take a look at your last term. So y to the power of half. That means you have y to the power of 3 over 2. So minus 16 over 3 y to the power of 3 over 2, substituting the values 0 and 4. Alright, so this is what we are going to see. Alright, so for these terms, what we can is next, of course, put in whatever values you see, alright? So for the first one, 6 cubed minus 4 cubed, that would be 256 minus 64, which is... Alright, so we're at the last bit of this integration, since all we have to do now is to substitute in a few values in order to solve it. So of course you could leave all of these calculations at last, so you could input all of them into your calculator at the same time. So for this part, you're going to have 4 times 4 to the power of 7 over 2. Well, of course, if you can mentally calculate quick enough, well, over 2 is just square root, so you have 2 to the power of 7 for the part behind. Then minus 16 over 3 times 4 to the power of 3 over 2. And of course, square root, you can also change that into 2 to the power of 3. So now in this part, then you can choose to use a calculator in order to find it. So what you're going to see is 28 divided by 3 multiplied by 6 cubed minus 4 cubed minus 32, add on to 2 to the power of 9 minus. And so this part, the answer you get is 1856. Alright? So that will be the answer you have in this example. So what's so special about this example we just had? Now, when we first took a look at its boundary, this is what its boundary looks like. And this boundary, when you want to integrate along the x-axis or in the x direction first, then you have to separate them into two different parts in order to solve them, since they do have different functions for the parts. So then you can use that to determine the boundaries you have. And for the lower part, you have to separate one function into two different functions in order to get the one-to-one functions in order to integrate them. And then, well, you just have a little bit of simple integration simplification and more integration in order to get your final answer. So this is just one of your first methods. Well, if you want to see why is this just a first method, well, of course you could go try on your own, explore around, or you could just wait a little while and stay tuned for more videos. Alright, so I hope for this lesson you are clear of everything so far. I'll be ending this here, and thank you for your watching.